But, hey, we've got a preview to get to, Shay. We could talk hypotheticals all night long here. But
Right.
let's jump into the Auburn Tigers, Shane, where, again, we're putting in our optimism. We're putting in our blue and orange glasses here when we talk about the Auburn Tigers, who went 6-7 last year, sixth in the SEC West, lost to Houston in the Birmingham Bowl. But, man, we got to remember, Shay, this was a team in November, controlled their own destiny in the West, could have beat Alabama, should have beat them, really. They held the lead there with 3 minutes left, I believe it was, in the Birmingham Bowl. They were up 28-3 on Mississippi State before it all came crashing down on them.
Right.
I mean, this is a razor-thin margin here. I know they won 6 games, but it could very easily been a 9-10 win season, and then we're sitting here saying, my God, Bryan Harsin, he may be the best coach in the SEC. It's wild how that can flip on you in a heartbeat. You know what?
Well, Auburn was such a frustrating team, and it has been for a couple of years for me anyway, especially when you gamble, because it was so tough thinking, all right, man, this is they found themselves. They found their identity. They're back on track. This is the Auburn Tigers I grew up watching. Here we go. And then they just shit the bed. That's just it was just a wild roller coaster and of ups and downs, and this year I think we'll have a little bit more stability, but you know, we're going to have new coaches, we're going to have new players. It's not going to look the same that it has in years past. So I'm going to be optimistic the best I can on this show, Mike, but you know me, I've been a poo-pooer of Auburn for you know, a couple months now. So but I'm getting my optimistic hat on, and I'm ready to talk some war damn Eagle.
Well, we've got a number of staff changes over the offseason. Of course, Shane, both coordinators have been replaced. Our new coordinator, Eric Casal, he was your receivers coach last season. And honestly, I don't know a ton about this guy, Shane, but I did some research. And look at some of the guys he's coached. When he was at Cal, he coached Deshaun Jackson. He coached Keenan Allen. He coached Marvin Jones. I mean, these are like stud players in the NFL. He coached receivers at Colorado, some guy named Scotty McKnight. You may be saying, well, who the hell is Scotty McKnight? Well, all he is, Shane, Colorado's all-time leader in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. So, hey, I take away from that, Shane, that Auburn's new offensive coordinator, he knows what the hell he's doing when it comes to coaching receivers. And that has been an issue there at Auburn for a little while. So, I feel like the receivers are in good hands, at least, with our new coordinator. And on the defensive side, Shane, Jeff Schmedding.
Well, Mike, didn't they also add Ike down there?
Yes, sir. So we've got a new receivers coach, Ike Hilliard. All SEC fans know that name. He's been he was a first-round pick out of the Florida Gators under Steve Spurrier. He's been coaching in the NFL for 11 seasons. I mean, you combine those two, hell, Auburn should have the best receivers in the country. You know what?
Hey, dude, these guys have invested some time and some money into making that, especially that position group, better. And sometimes you look the years past, that's where they failed miserably.
Right. Now, we've got some turnover on the defensive side, Shane. The defensive coordinator, Jeff Schmedding, he was Auburn linebacker coach last year, but he had been a defensive coordinator previously at Eastern Washington. He's been with Bryan Harsin for a number of years. So, again, he's another guy I don't know a ton about, but hell, Bryan Harsin knows him. Bryan Harsin trusts him. That should be good enough for them diehard Auburn fans. But now with Schmedding moving up to coordinator, they had to hire a new defensive line and linebackers coach, but they hired Christian Robinson, Shane, who was former Florida linebacker coach under Dan Mullen. He's been a coach at Georgia, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and he even turned down Michigan to be his final season there at Florida. So this is a young coach that is known as a recruiter. I think Auburn made a hell of a hire here getting Christian Robinson to be the new linebackers coach.
Oh, yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head, recruiting.
Yep.
Because that's what he's going to be doing a lot of.
And their new defensive line coach, Shane, another familiar name to SEC fans, Jimmy Brumbaugh. He was an all-SEC defensive lineman at Auburn, so he's coming home. He coached the defensive line at Tennessee under Jeremy Pruitt, Unfortunately, he got fired in the middle of the year there, but he's coached Kentucky's defensive line. He's coached Colorado's defensive line. So, hey, not a bad. It's always great to welcome home a former standout player, and that's what the Tigers are getting in Jimmy Brumbaugh, the new defensive line coach.
Absolutely. I mean, it means more to those coaches.
Exactly.
You see this in other programs. You talk about just galvanizing a locker room. It's a guy that's been there before and played in front of these types of fans. So I think it's important to have a little home cooking.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we talk about Auburn's returning production, Shane, here's where we get, it's a little inconsistent up and down here because we're returning only 27% of our passing yards, of course, with Bo Nix transferring out to Oregon. TJ Finley is the leading returning passer with 827 passing yards. Mm-hmm. But here's where our bread's going to be buttered, Shane, at Auburn this year. Rushing. 89% of the rushing yards are returning with Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter back for another year on the Plains. This is going to be an offense that has got to be led on the ground because we don't even know who the quarterback is going to be this fall. But, hell, you can't do any better than Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter as your 1-2. You know what?
No, I think this is one of the best running back groups in the country. And obviously it has been a strong suit for many, many years, but we're going to need that quarterback room to step up so that he can have a little access to that secondary because right now they're going to keep loading those 8, 9 in the box.
Mm-hmm. Now, receiving yards, we're returning only 58%. Shed Jackson, he was our leading returning receiver. So, again, it's always dangerous, Shane, when you don't know who your quarterback is, you don't know who your receivers, at least your standouts, are going to be. So, a lot of unknown with the Auburn Tigers. But, again, hey, we're not focusing on the negative, Shane. We're focusing on the positive. And the offensive line returned 77% of their starts, 4 of 5 on the offensive line starters returning for the Tigers. So, again, you factor in the experience on the offensive line and the running backs. This could be an elite year on the ground for the Tigers.
Yeah. No, like I said, this is going to be their bread and butter, but everybody knows that in the SEC. So
right.
The fact that we've got some unknowns could be playing in their favor. I think about LSU a few years ago, and I'm not saying Auburn's going to win a national championship or anything, but there was a lot of question marks about the type of offense they're going to be running and some of the players that are going to be playing and questions at quarterback. There's a lot of similarities there. There's talent on this roster, and maybe a little bit of that unknown is not a bad deal.
Mm-hmm. Now, on the defensive side, Shane, we returned 45% of our tackles, 54% of our tackles for loss. Now, here's a key, 72% of our sacks. So, hey, that's critical for a defense, and only 44% of the interceptions. So, a lot of production lost on that defensive side of the ball, but we still got Derek Hall when his 9 sacks and his 12.5 tackles for loss returning. There is talent on defense, but again, man, a lot of lost production. There's going to be a lot of guys that got to step up this year for the Tigers defense.
But how many times has Auburn done that, Mike? I mean, how many times have we got to the end of the season and say, oh, shit, who's this guy? You know what I'm saying? They always find talent in Auburn. It never surprised you. Just look at the NFL drafts.
Mm-hmm. Now, oh man, the list of transfers, Shane, is a wild one. So outgoing transfers, I'm just going to mention all these guys that left. Bo Nix, of course. Kobe Hudson, the receiver, to Central Florida. Sean Shivers, the running back, to Indiana. Offensive lineman Tayshawn Manning to Kentucky. Ladarius Tennyson to Ole Miss. J.J. Pegues to Ole Miss. Ian Matthews to Missouri. Lee Hunter to Central Florida. Elijah Cannon, Purdue. Roe Torrance, Arizona State. Amari Harvey to Georgia Tech. And Jay Hardy to Liberty. That is a lot of talent and experience off the Auburn roster. But then they turned around and added a bunch of transfers too. So, of course, the big one, Zach Calzada, Texas A&M starting quarterback, last year threw for a little over 2,000 yards, 17 touchdowns, and started 10 games for the Aggies. And they also added from Oregon, Robbie Ashford, who was an Alabama native from Hoover High. He was the spring game MVP you take that with a grain of salt because you can't put too much into a spring game, but he certainly looked the part. So our quarterback room is, getting some fresh faces in there.
The old spring game MVP,
That's always on someone's bio, like 20 years down the road.
No, I think I have that in my bio,
They desperately needed help at the receiver position, Shay. They added Coy Moore, former LSU. He had 22 catches, 177 yards in 10 games. They added a receiver, Warsham from Miami, who's another Alabama native. In high school, check out his stats, Shane. Incredible. 215 catches, 2,400 receiving yards, 28 touchdowns. He's only played one game in college, but hell, I like this theme, and that's the same thing they did with the Oregon defensive lineman Jason Jones, former touted Alabama native, returning home after 2 seasons at Oregon. They got, I love this guy, Morris Joseph from Memphis, a defensive lineman. He in 21 games, Shane, for Memphis, 90 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks. Can't beat that. They also added from Oregon DJ James, a defensive back, who 72 career tackles, 2 interceptions. One guy they love down there is a safety, Craig McDonald. They got him from Iowa State. 13 starts last year, 41 tackles, 10 tackles against them Sooners. They got a defensive lineman, Marcus Bragg from Western Kentucky, 27 tackles, 4 sacks last season. A linebacker from North Carolina, Eugene Asante, 62 tackles and played in 12 games last year. So that's kind of the rundown of the transfers they've added that I anticipate will make an impact this year. But again, it's hard to have so many guys incoming and leaving and going and knowing what the hell to even make of this roster. You know what?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, Mike. You're gonna find some diamonds in there. There's gonna be some that don't pan out, but you also had a lot of kids transfer out that weren't working out in Auburn, and part of the reasons why they were unsuccessful last season. So I'm not saying I don't like to blame it on the kids, but sometimes you got negative energy in that locker room, and you gotta cut that cancer out. So hopefully that's what Auburn did.
Mm-hmm. And the Tigers signed the SEC's number 9 recruiting class, Shane, and some of just the quick highlights of that. Robert Woodyard, number 13 linebacker in the country, Shane. They flipped him, I believe it was on signing day, from Alabama. So, he can play. Yeah. And then how about this, Shane? They really cleaned up the junior college ranks. Number 1 defensive lineman, Jeffrey Umba. Number 1 safety, Marquise Gilbert. Number 1 corner, Keontae Scott. So if you need impact from the junior college ranks, you get the best of the best in junior college. You can't do much better than number one, and number one. You know what?
Hey, and if they're not starting, they're still competitive depth. That's what I love about JUCOs. They got some of that sophomore weight on them already. They've got a little bit of that offseason with the Auburn weight crew. So I think they're going to be all right. But this is what you want to see, especially when you've got a lot of starters transferring out or going to the NFL or graduating. You want to reach into those JUCOs and bring some to your roster. So hopefully 1 or 2 of those will hit.
Now, ranking the offensive positions for the Auburn Tigers, Shane, again, I think it's got to be number 1, the running backs with Tank Bigsby, Jarquez Hunter, Sean Jackson. They added Central Michigan transfer Jordan Ingram last year, another transfer Justin Jones from UAB. But, we kind of already hit on it. The running backs have got to lead the way for the Auburn Tigers. There's no better unit probably in the entire team than the running backs.
Well, yeah, without a doubt, and expect more of a committee this year. I think, Tank really shines when he's not having to be one of those 30 rep cowbells. When he can come out there and just wear on a defense late in the game. That's when Tank really starts to shine. And with this offensive line, which I think you're about to get to, clear cut number 1 on this roster.
Oh, now you could put O-line right there. I'm going tight ends. I think they got, John Samuel Shanker. He's already got all the Auburn record shape for receiving, so I love that. Luke Deal's a solid player. Tyler Fromm, brother of old Jake Fromm down there. He was a touted recruit, and Brandon Frazier. So they love to use tight ends down there at Auburn with this staff, and I think they got a couple good ones here.
When did tight ends stop becoming linemen? It's like growing up, a tight end was just a fast lineman. You know what I'm saying? One a little skinnier. Can't quite put him at tackle. Let's put him out there. But all of a sudden, I missed that. I missed it. It was somewhere in the late 2000s, I think. Maybe what was his name? Winslow or Shocker? Yeah. One of those guys coming out. And we're like, oh man, tight end's a position. They could do something else than blocking. So no, I love the hybrid. I love what they do with tight ends, multiple tight end formations. So yeah, I mean. I don't give them enough respect. I'm still calling them offensive line, though, so that's my lineman or my number 2.
Yeah, so lineman, that's right where I got them. Keandre Jones, Austin Troxel, Nick Brahms, Brandon Cancel. That is a solid foursome right there. Now we need to figure out, who's going to be our 5th starters. Is it going to be Alex Jackson, Killian Zaire, Jaleel Irvin? It's good to have flexibility here. We got 8 linemen we can go to war with here on the offensive line. So that's a solid experienced group right there.
Absolutely. And I'm expecting more from the wide receiver core. I know they're nowhere near your top 3 here, but they got speed, Mike. And that's what they went out there and got. And that's something you can't teach. So if we can get him and get the group with Calzada or get the group with Finley, whoever they decide to go with there, getting some good reps in, I expect more play from the quarterback and better play from the wide receivers here, especially with all that talent coaching them.
Yeah, and speaking of quarterbacks, so that's the next group I got. Zach Calzada, I think he's going to start. DJ Finley, Robbie Ashford, battling for the backup. And then they got a true freshman they really like, Holden Grenier. And then the receivers that you mentioned, Shane.
1 second. He's getting excited. Bruno, we're talking Auburn, not Tennessee. Calm down. He gets pumped up.
The receiver, Shane, Malcolm Johnson, he stood out in the spring. Javarius Johnson, he had his moments there. He was on our breakout candidate list. Ced Jackson, he was our leading returning receiver. Xavion Capers, been waiting for that guy to break out. He could be a huge breakout candidate. Jay Fair, Travarish, Dawson. There's your group there. It's some talented group, but, like I said, we've been waiting for a lot of these guys to break out. It just hasn't happened yet. And maybe that's in part because, we were lacking confidence in our quarterbacks here towards the tail end of the season. So if the quarterback play gets better, these receivers will certainly have a lot more production on the field.
For sure.
Now, the defense, Shane, I mean, you could basically put this in any order because we have got depth and talent at every unit here, but I'm going defensive back, Shane. Nehemiah Pritchard, Donovan Kaufman, Jalen Simpson, Zion Puckett, Marquise Gilbert, the transfer Craig McDonald, Austin Osbury, the freshman, and DJ James, the other transfer. We've got us a hell of a defensive backfield, and I think the group's that's gonna lead the way for Auburn's defense this season.
And it's deep, Mike. It's easy to get a couple of guys on the island out there, but you know what? Everybody needs a break every now and then. So I just like the depth that they've made here with the secondary, and that really shows later in the season.
Yeah, and the defensive line, we've got some star power with Derek Hall. I love him. I think he's one of the more underrated defensive linemen last season. Colby Wooten, who's our leading tackler. Marcus Harris. We've Jeffrey Umba, the number 1 junior college lineman. Jason Jones, the Oregon transfer. Morvis Joseph, the Memphis transfer. Don't forget Dylan Brooks. Was a guy supposed to be at Tennessee, but
who's that guy?
Once they fired Pruitt, he's back at Auburn. So, and Marquise Burke. So again, a very, very talented and deep defensive line here that is going to carry the Tigers this fall.
Yeah, and that's the position group that always shines when you talk Auburn football. There's always 1 or 2 of those guys that you see playing on Sunday.
And then last but not least here, again, linebackers. I mean, more star power. Owen Popo, touted recruit, been in the league a long, long time.
Is this the year? Is this the year for him?
I mean, it's got to be, right? So
yeah,
we've been waiting for him to be all SEC, and it just hadn't happened yet. So this has got to be the year. He came back for a reason. They got Eugene Asante, Wesley Steiner, Cam Riley, Joko Willis, and then Robert Woodyard, the guy they flipped from Alabama. That's the makings of a pretty good linebacking core right there.
Yeah, I think so too.
Now, we got no worry on special teams because we got Anders Carlson, ninth year in a row, Shay. We've got a Carlson down here kicking. That's all they do down there.
Are they just changing jerseys or something down there? It's like the same guy over and over. And the 8th year senior.
The punter, Oscar Chapman, was one of the best in the SEC last season. So we got no issues when it comes to special teams at Auburn. Which means, Shane, it is time to get to your favorite part of these team previews, breaking down the schedule. And, man, we have dissect this Auburn schedule all off-season long. So let's get right into it. Laffer, right out the gate. Mercer, I don't even know where the hell that is. Mercer comes out of Jordan Hare.
They should call it Mercy because they're going to need it, son. The Mercy rule at halftime. Auburn up 49-0 here. This is going to be a bloodbath. And what I love about it, right out of the gate, Mike, I think Calzada's their guy. I think we're going to look at this game and say, damn, they do got some wide receivers. Yeah. They've got some explosive plays on the outside, and that only helps their bread and butter, their running game, and they can lean on Tank, and they're not going to need them much during this game. 1-0, Auburn.
Now, week 2, another home game, Shane. San Jose State, which apparently is one of the better teams, whatever the league they're in, but good luck. They're going to need it here. You know what?
Well, there's a reason Big Ten didn't take this program, Mike, because nobody wants to go there. It's beautiful, I'm sure, but this is 2-0 easy.
Now
we're building confidence, baby. We're 2-0.
Here's a tricky one, Shane. Penn State comes to town.
Yes.
Week 3, you could make the case Auburn should have won last year at Penn State. There was some ref shenanigans up there, but hey, I think Auburn's got they've got a shot here against Penn State. What do you think?
I do too. There was parts of that game last year. It was extremely frustrating to watch because Auburn was the better football team. And they spin it as a Big Ten win. They spin it. I mean, it was just – I hated it. I hate everything about it. I hate James Franklin, obviously. I don't hate anybody, but I'm just kidding. I do. I hate that guy. I cannot stand him. Anchor down. Get the hell out of here. I think Auburn – rights the ship here. I think they're rolling, brother. This is a game that they're not going to be expected to win, but 2-0 with that confidence. Calzada's he's getting comfortable back there with this new offense, and let's face it, not on the run. One of the things about Calzada last year, there was a lot of times he was constantly running around in that pocket. I don't think he's going to have to do that near as much with this offensive line and with the reliable running game of Tank and Committee. I think at this point we're going to find out that Calzada is an SEC quarterback. Give me 3-0. Penn State goes down.
Now a tricky game here. Missouri, although it is all in the plains, so many home games on this docket here, but this will be a huge one. The SEC opener. Coach Harsin, he cannot afford to lose to Missouri here.
Sneaky game, especially if we are 3-0. This is a game that you could easily overlook. This is one that you just kind of the energy comes down. You just beat the Nittany Lions on national TV, and everybody's excited. And how many times have we seen the following week a team that's well prepared, like Eli's boys, come in and beat somebody? So this one right here is going to be on the coaching staff. This is going to be on those players in the locker room to just make sure they stay focused at task at hand. It's every game. It's 1-0 each week. I know it's coach speak, but that's exactly what you got to do. You got to go into this game not overlooking Mizzou, because if you do, you can lose. So being optimistic, I've got Auburn Tigers 4-0.
Now, how about this, Shane? LSU comes to town. One of the best, rivalries here in the SEC West. Auburn, LSU. Auburn got the win in Death Valley, first time in 20-some-odd years last season. Do they beat LSU 2 in a row?
They do, Mike. Again, I think LSU's got a lot of talent. I just don't think they found themselves yet. And, it's going to take – they're going to have some growing pains. Not saying that Auburn's not, but we're talking optimistic here. We've got a program that's 4-0 that's already beat a top 10 team. Auburn's back in the top 25. That's how quick you get the respect in the SEC, and you do that by beating teams like LSU. So I'm going with the win for the Auburn Tigers here.
Ooh, how about next week, Shane?
It's a coin toss. Now, I want to be straight. We're being optimistic. It's a coin toss game right now, in my opinion. So anytime I'm trying to be optimistic for one team or the other, I'm going to pick that team. I think this is going to be one of the best football games that we'll see this year. And right now, I'm going to go with Auburn just because I'm being optimistic.
Now, why do you hate LSU, Shane? Is it because they play Tennessee this year?
I hate Notre Dame so much that no.
Now, how about the next game? Ooh, tricky one, Shane. At Georgia. I mean, it's hard to see anybody beating the Dogs in Athens. You know what?
I know. I sound like a robot here. There's nobody beating Georgia. Georgia is. I mean, even it's going to be it would take. I mean, everything, brother. It would take possible injuries. It would take the stars aligned. It would take out some breakout plays on special teams, potentially one of these, secondary interceptions. I still don't. I can't optimistically say Auburn has a shot against Georgia because they are that good. Unfortunately, the Tigers take their first loss here.
Now, tricky game the following week, Shane. At Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. Who do you like in that one? Auburn at Ole Miss.
Mike, this is another one. I call it a coin toss game because right now I think these two programs, it's tough to predict who I think is going to be winning. Even this far out, I would imagine this is a 3-4 point game if you're looking out of Vegas. So if they get right, because you're coming off a loss, and those are always tough, man, especially when you thought you maybe had a shot to beat the Georgia Bulldogs. It's that hangover, that hungover feeling. You don't want that. Nobody likes that. But I think they get this ship right. I think Bryan. That's one thing about Auburn, man. They got their back against the wall. Yeah. The world is on them. They want Bryan to fail. They want to be looking for a new coach. This locker room feels that. And I think coming into this season, that's the kind of attitude you're going to have from this group, that it's us against the world. And if they keep playing the way we know they can play and play Auburn football, there's a real shot that these guys are going to upset a lot of teams. And that does include this week. I think they get it right. Auburn gets the victory here.
Was that Bryan Harsin just showed up at your door there, Shane?
Yeah, I owe him some money.
Now, how about this one? They got 2 weeks to prepare. Tricky game, though. Arkansas comes to Jordan-Hare Stadium. Yeah. Who do you like in that one? Arkansas at Auburn.
Oh, Mike. I try to be optimistic. I am.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not a coin toss game, in my opinion. This is a game that Auburn's just not there yet. I think it hinges on how far Calzada comes. I think it hinges a little bit on how much production this defense really did bring back this season. But when I look at Arkansas's roster, optimistically, I cannot see them winning this game. I think it would be close for a little bit, but Arkansas has a little bit too much depth, in my opinion, and a hell of a quarterback. So, Unfortunately, I've got Auburn losing this game.
Now, how about this? Another tricky one. Auburn at Mississippi State was kind of the beginning of the end for Auburn last year. Could they go into Starkville and combat them cowbells and come out with a win?
Yeah, because they can do it. They can beat this team. They've got when you look at teams a little bit different than Arkansas, I just don't think they pair well together. This one they do. What Mississippi State's good at, Arkansas is good at stopping. What they're bad at, what you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, sorry,
Auburn.
All these beers are kicking in now. But I say that to say this, Mike. Optimistically, I think Auburn can beat Mississippi State. Neutral field, or it doesn't matter where it's at. It could be. Where's this one at? Is that Mississippi State?
At Mississippi State.
That's the only kicker right there. But I'm still going to give Auburn the edge here.
Now, how about the next one, Shane? Texas A&M comes to Auburn, so at least you get the home field advantage. But that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, this is one of those, brother. You just gotta pray everything goes right, and I just don't think it does. So unfortunately, Auburn is just not in the same ballpark of A&M.
Now, how about this? Should be an easy one. Western Kentucky comes to Auburn. That's a win, right?
Oh yeah, this is definitely a win. You should always beat the Hilltoppers and that dumbass mascot of theirs that they feel like needs too much airtime. You know what I'm saying? Every time I get on there, it's like they're looking at this guy dancing. It's like I've never seen a mascot get as much airtime as this goofy thing. But yeah, this is they got cool helmets, but it's a terrible team. You should win this one.
Now, last one. I don't know how optimistic you are on this one. Auburn at Alabama. Games in Tuscaloosa. Any chance pulling the stunner? Well,
Mike, yeah, there was a chance last year, and we're still talking about Bryan getting fired. So this game, you could kind of throw a lot of that out. But you can't. You know what I'm saying? It's like I would be nuts, even optimistically thinking Auburn has a shot to win this game. But every time you say that, there's a miracle. There's an upset. There's a 101-yard punt return, field goal return. You know, it's just there's always something, a batted pass, and next thing you know, Auburn's winning the game. So you can't rule it out. But if you're a gambling man, yeah, I've got Alabama winning this one.
So even optimistically, you got Auburn at 8-4.
Yeah,
and that's not the expectation certainly, but I honestly think a lot of Auburn fans, given all the offseason issues, I think they take 8-4 at this point in time, don't you?
What would you have them at?
I kind of lean more towards 7-5 because I don't think, like you said, Georgia, Alabama, A&M, I just don't see them winning those games. So there's your 3 automatic losses. And then I've got a couple of games here listed as toss-ups, Shane. Penn State at home, LSU at home, at Ole Miss, Arkansas at home, and at Mississippi State. So you're just not going to win that many toss-ups. So I'm trying to, again, we're keeping this optimistic. I'm giving 3 of the 5 toss-ups. So for me, it's 7-5 would be the record.
Okay. And I think they'd love it. I think they would be good with 7 or 8, Maybe. I don't know. Would you? You're Auburn. I'm expecting 12 wins if I'm Auburn. I want to be back to the West Championship. I don't want the Iron Bowl to be a miracle needed. I want it to be just a good ball game. So I hate it for them. I really do, because I can relate. That you win a national championship in your lifetime, you expect to keep going back, and sometimes it feels like you drift further away when you're an Auburn Tiger fan. So I need something. The fans need something this year, brother. They really do. They need this locker room to play better than they are. And if they can do that, man, if they can come out and stop making excuses and just get to freaking work, you know what I'm saying? Right. Auburn can make some noise, and they could be fun again. I truly believe it.
Now, last question I got for you, Shane, on Auburn. Bigger game, in your opinion, for the season, Missouri or the following week LSU? Because the way I look at it, you obviously always want to beat LSU.
Yeah.
But I think if you lose it, you could say, well, hell, that's one of the best programs in the country. I think if Auburn loses Missouri, they're probably going to lose LSU, and then it's going to snowball Georgia at Ole Miss. I mean, I think the season more or less hinges on beating the Missouri Tigers. It just feels like a game that Auburn fans, they feel like this team should not even compete with us at home. To me, Missouri is the biggest game of the year.
It's a huge game, Mike, and obviously Penn State's a big game because everybody's going to be watching it. But that bounce back game, if you lose, how do you bounce back? And I don't think Auburn's one of those programs that can bounce back from a loss with Mizzou. In fact, we've talked about this in podcast. Here you are. You bring me back to the dark side. I'm trying to be positive, and you're wanting me to. I'm firing Bryan again. So I'm just saying it's a very crucial game because of its timing. Because worst case scenario, you lose to Penn State, you gotta bounce back, and if you beat Penn State, you got to keep the motivation and momentum rolling, and you do that with Mizzou. That easily could be overlooked. So it's a trap game, and at one direction, and then it's a rebound game in another. And if you lose it in either way, I mean, you lose to Mizzou because that fan base is expecting you to beat the Tigers. Right. Mizzou knows that they've got talent. Mizzou knows that they have an opportunity to beat Auburn. But Auburn fans, they're not realistic when it comes to that. I talk to a lot of them, man. They're diehard fans. They have high expectations, and they should, rightfully so. So yeah, that's a tough game and a tough timing. So that's the one I've got an asterisk by as well.
Well, hey, buddy, we've gone incredibly long on this one, so let's cut this thing off. You got anything else before we hop off the line?
Yeah, real quick. Best offensive player, Tank?
Got to be Tank.
Okay, defense?
Defense, I'm going to go with my man Derek Hall on the defensive line.
Okay, I'm saying Popo. I think this is the year he reminds everybody why he was one of the top recruits coming out. And then if you're picking the Heisman, you're going Tank again?
Oh, yeah, I think that's the only option here.
All right, I'm going Tank as well.
Well,
maybe Calzada. Dark horse. Calzada.
Dark horse?
He finds his receiver. Yeah.
All right, we're being optimistic, so I'm not gonna shoot that down. Not on this episode, but hey, that's gonna do it, buddy, for another fall camp preview. I think we're 5 down, 11 to go. A race to SEC Media Days. Cannot wait. I hope everyone's appreciating all this great content. Shane, I know I sure do appreciate you for continuing to show up. It's 4th of July. Fireworks going off in the background. Shane's showing up for these podcasts. I cannot thank you enough, and I cannot thank each and every one of you for continuing to support the show. But that is going to do it for this episode. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right. See you guys. War Damn Eagle.